The courtroom was quieter than usual that afternoon, not peaceful quiet, heavy quiet. The kind of silence that hangs in the air right before something explosive happens. Every person inside that room could feel it. The audience members sitting behind the rail leaned forward in anticipation. The camera operators barely moved. Even the bailiff stood unusually still near the courtroom doors, because sitting in the witness chair was a woman who had spent 20 years hiding the truth. And today, that truth was finally catching up to her. Marilyn Reeves adjusted the sleeve of her beige blazer and forced another calm smile onto her face. Her makeup was perfect. Her posture was elegant. She looked like the kind of suburban mother people trusted immediately. The kind who organized charity events. The kind who baked cookies for church fundraisers. The kind nobody would ever suspect of helping a criminal. But Judge Eleanor Whitmore had spent 35 years watching people lie. And the moment Marilyn Reeves walked into her courtroom, she knew something was wrong. Because some lies are hidden in words, and some lies are hidden in behavior, the nervous glances, the rehearsed confidence. The way Marilyn kept checking on her son every few seconds, like she was silently reminding him to stay calm. Judge Whitmore noticed all of it, and sitting beside Marilyn was the reason this entire courtroom had become so tense. 28-year-old Tyler Reeves, clean-cut, well-dressed, calm expression, the perfect appearance of innocence. But appearances meant nothing inside Judge Whitmore's courtroom, because Tyler Reeves was accused of stealing over $12,000 from a 74-year-old widow named Margaret Collins. And according to the evidence, he had done it while pretending to care about her like family. Margaret sat quietly on the opposite side of the courtroom, clutching a folder against her chest with trembling fingers. Her silver hair framed a face worn down by grief, stress, and humiliation. 18 months earlier, her husband Richard had died unexpectedly after nearly 5 decades of marriage. After his death, Margaret's entire world collapsed emotionally. Richard had always handled finances, the bank accounts, the online payments, the paperwork. Without him, she felt lost, confused, alone. And that was exactly when Tyler entered her life. At first, he seemed wonderful, helpful, patient. He lived only a few houses away and often stopped by to check on her. Sometimes he carried groceries into the house. Sometimes he fixed small things around her kitchen. He listened to her stories about Richard and pretended to genuinely care. He called her Grandma Margaret, and slowly, Margaret trusted him too much. One afternoon, Tyler offered to help organize her banking information so she would stop feeling overwhelmed. Margaret hesitated at first, but Tyler smiled warmly and said, "You shouldn't have to struggle with this alone." Those words stayed with her because grief makes people vulnerable, and loneliness makes people trust the wrong person. Within weeks, Tyler gained temporary access to one of her accounts to help manage bills. 3 months later, $12,000 disappeared. At first, Margaret believed there had to be some mistake. She called the bank repeatedly, then she called Tyler. No answer. Agony. Nothing. The young man who once visited twice a week suddenly disappeared completely. And when police officers finally became involved, Marilyn Reeves stepped forward, Tyler's mother. Instead of helping investigators, she immediately defended him. "My son would never steal from anyone," she told them firmly. Then she looked directly at Margaret and said words that nearly destroyed the elderly woman emotionally. "She's grieving. She's confused. Elderly people forget things all the time." That sentence haunted Margaret for weeks, because deep down, she started wondering if maybe Marilyn was right. Maybe grief had damaged her memory. Maybe she really had given Tyler permission. Maybe she was losing her mind. The emotional damage from that doubt hurt even more than the stolen money. Because being robbed is painful, but being manipulated into questioning your own reality, that destroys people differently. Now Margaret sat inside Judge Whitmore's courtroom, praying someone would finally believe her. Judge Whitmore adjusted her glasses slowly and looked toward Marilyn. "Mrs. Reeves," she began calmly, "you submitted a written statement claiming your son was with you during the afternoon of April 18th. Is that correct?" Marilyn answered immediately. "Yes, Your Honor." "And how certain are you about that?" "Completely certain." "What exactly were you doing together?" Marilyn smiled softly. "We spent the afternoon cleaning our backyard and preparing the garden for spring." Judge Whitmore nodded slightly. "And Tyler never left your sight?" "No, Your Honor. Not even briefly? Not once." Tyler looked relieved beside his attorney. Marilyn sounded confident, almost too confident. Judge Whitmore leaned back carefully. "And you remember this clearly?" "Yes." "Why?" Marilyn paused briefly. "Because it was important family time. My son and I spent the entire day together." The judge studied her face carefully. Then she asked quietly, "What was the weather like that afternoon?" Marilyn answered without hesitation. "Sunny, warm, beautiful weather." Judge Whitmore slowly opened a file. "That's interesting." The courtroom immediately grew tense because everyone recognized that tone. Judge Whitmore continued calmly. "County weather reports show severe thunderstorms from early morning until almost 5 o'clock that evening." Silence. Marilyn blinked rapidly. "Well, maybe I confused the exact date." The judge's eyes narrowed instantly. "Moments ago you said you remembered clearly." "I do remember clearly," Marilyn insisted nervously. "I just may have confused one afternoon with another." Judge Whitmore folded her hands together. "So your memory is suddenly unreliable?" Marilyn swallowed hard. "No, Your Honor, I simply—" "Mrs. Reeves," the judge interrupted sharply. "Either your memory is clear or it is not." Marilyn shifted uncomfortably. "My son is not a criminal." Judge Whitmore leaned forward slightly. "That wasn't my question." The tension inside the courtroom became unbearable. Margaret lowered her eyes quietly. Tyler's lawyer looked increasingly nervous. Then Judge Whitmore opened another folder. "Mrs. Reeves," she continued, "are you aware your son has previously been accused of fraud on multiple occasions?" Marilyn's expression tightened. "Those situations were misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings," Judge Whitmore repeated coldly. "At age 19, your son scammed a college roommate out of $4,000. Marilyn said nothing. At 23, he was sued by a small business owner for fraudulent transactions. Still silence. And in every single situation, Judge Whitmore paused carefully. "You stepped in to protect him." Marilyn finally spoke emotionally. "He's my son. What was I supposed to do? Let his life be ruined over mistakes?" Judge Whitmore's voice became sharper. "Mistakes teach lessons, Mrs. Reeves. Protection without accountability teaches entitlement." Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Marilyn immediately looked toward him protectively, and Judge Whitmore noticed that maternal instinct, that desperate need to rescue him no matter what. She had seen it before. Parents so terrified of seeing their children suffer that they accidentally helped create monsters. Judge Whitmore looked directly at Marilyn. "You love your son very much, don't you?" Marilyn nodded instantly. "Of course. And because you love him," the judge continued slowly, "you believe protecting him is the same thing as helping him." Marilyn's eyes watered slightly. "I only wanted him to have chances." Judge Whitmore nodded once. "And every time you removed consequences from his life, he learned he could hurt people without fear." The courtroom became completely silent. Marilyn looked shaken now, but she still refused to back down. "My son did not steal from Margaret Collins." Judge Whitmore slowly reached toward a thick manila folder sitting beside her bench. The moment she touched it, everything changed. Tyler immediately became tense. His attorney straightened nervously. Margaret stopped breathing for a moment. Judge Whitmore opened the folder carefully. "Mrs. Reeves," she said calmly, "I'm about to give you one final opportunity to tell the truth." Marilyn's heartbeat visibly increased. "What do you mean?" The judge's expression hardened. "I mean, I already know you lied." The courtroom exploded with whispers. Tyler's attorney immediately stood. "Objection!" "Sit down," Judge Whitmore snapped instantly. The attorney sat again. Judge Whitmore looked back toward Marilyn. "This is your last chance. Would you like to change your testimony?" Marilyn hesitated, just for a second, a tiny crack, but 20 years of protecting Tyler pushed her forward again. "No, Your Honor," she said firmly. "My son was with me." Judge Whitmore nodded slowly. "Very well." She pulled out a photograph. "This is security footage from Capital Bank recorded at 2:13 p.m. on April 18th. The monitor switched on, and there he was. Tyler Reeves, standing at Margaret Collins' bank account, withdrawing cash. The entire courtroom froze. Marilyn's face lost all color instantly. Margaret covered her mouth with shaking hands and began crying quietly. Judge Whitmore continued without emotion. "We also recovered footage from a pawn shop 32 minutes later." Another image appeared, Tyler selling jewelry, Margaret's wedding ring, a necklace from her late husband, and a bracelet passed down through generations. Margaret completely broke down emotionally. Marilyn looked physically ill now. But Judge Whitmore wasn't finished. We also recovered phone location records placing Tyler at Mrs. Collins' home earlier that afternoon. Tyler stared straight ahead silently, then Judge Whitmore lifted several printed pages. And finally, her voice became colder. Text messages. Tyler immediately panicked. "Wait!" Judge Whitmore ignored him completely. These messages were sent from Tyler Reeves to a friend the morning of April 18th. Then she began reading aloud. "Easy money today. Mom already knows the story if something goes wrong." Gasps filled the courtroom. Marilyn closed her eyes in horror. Judge Whitmore continued reading. "She's covered for me before. Nobody questions a crying mother." Margaret openly sobbed now. Years of manipulation, years of humiliation, all crashing down at once. But the most devastating moment came next. Tyler suddenly stood up in panic. "You said this would work, Mom?" The courtroom erupted instantly. Marilyn looked stunned. "What? You told me your testimony would protect me," Tyler shouted angrily. "You said the judge wouldn't have evidence." His lawyer desperately grabbed his arm. "Sit down." But Tyler was spiraling. "This is your fault. You weren't convincing enough." The cruelty of those words shattered Marilyn completely. This was the son she protected her entire life, the son she lied for, the son she sacrificed her integrity for. And now, he blamed her, not himself, her. Judge Whitmore remained silent for several seconds, allowing the truth to expose itself naturally. Then she spoke quietly. "Mrs. Reeves," Marilyn looked toward her through tears. "Look at your son." Slowly, Marilyn turned toward Tyler, and for the first time in years, she truly saw him clearly. Not her little boy, not the innocent child from her memories, not the victim she imagined. She saw a grown man who manipulated vulnerable people, a man who targeted grief and loneliness. A man who expected his mother to commit crimes for him without remorse, and worst of all, a man who felt absolutely no guilt for destroying another human being's life. Marilyn suddenly collapsed emotionally. Tears streamed uncontrollably down her face. "Oh my God," her voice barely worked. "What have I done?" The courtroom remained silent. Even Tyler looked uncomfortable now. Marilyn cried harder. "I thought I was helping him," she whispered painfully. "I thought protecting him was love." Judge Whitmore's expression softened slightly. "No, Mrs. Reeves," she said quietly. "Love without accountability becomes destruction." Marilyn buried her face in her hands. "For years I blamed everyone else," she sobbed. "Teachers, employers, police officers, friends." She looked toward Margaret. "But the truth is," her voice broke completely, "I helped create this." Margaret wiped tears from her cheeks silently. Judge Whitmore nodded slowly. "Every time you rescued him from consequences, you taught him he could hurt people and escape responsibility." Marilyn shook violently with emotion now. "And an innocent woman paid the price for that lesson." Tyler looked furious again, but for the first time in his entire life, nobody was rescuing him. Judge Whitmore straightened the papers on her desk. "This court finds Tyler Reeves responsible for fraud, theft, and financial exploitation of an elderly victim." Tyler's face drained completely. "He is ordered to repay all stolen funds, and this case will be referred for criminal prosecution." Then the judge looked directly at Marilyn. "And as for you," Marilyn looked terrified. "You knowingly lied under oath and attempted to obstruct justice." Tears rolled down Marilyn's face silently. "I understand," she whispered. Judge Whitmore stared at her carefully. "I hope someday you understand the difference between loving your child," she paused, "and destroying them." Court officers approached Tyler moments later as they prepared to escort him away. Marilyn suddenly stood. "Tyler." He stopped briefly. Tears poured down her face. "I'm sorry I failed you." Tyler looked at her coldly. Then he walked away without saying a single word. And in that moment, Marilyn Reeves finally understood the truth she had spent 20 years avoiding. Her protection had never saved her son. It had only taught him that consequences were optional, that other people existed to be used, that lies could fix everything. Until finally, they couldn't. The courtroom footage exploded online within hours. Millions watched Tyler betray his own mother. Millions watched Marilyn collapse emotionally after realizing what she had created. And millions debated the same painful question. Where is the line between love and enabling? Because sometimes most dangerous thing a parent can do is protect their child from reality for too long. And sometimes hardest form of love is finally letting consequences happen.